Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. As we get people into our webinar, we're going to give it a few minutes just so we can admit everybody. But while we have you here, we'd like to welcome you to the Kentucky Advising Academy's March webinar, an initiative of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education. And we are so glad that you decided to join us this morning. My name is Cheryl. And I am an advising coordinator with the Kentucky Advising Academy. And also joining me today is our director, Mitzi Holland, as well as our special guest, Dr. Michelle Sircy and Dr. Jessika Benson. We're going to give just a few more seconds for people to join in today before we really kick off. As we do give some time for everybody to join in, we'd love to know about you and kind of who's in the virtual room with us. So if you could please take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat, we would love to have your name, organization, and title. Lets us know kind of who's in the space today and who's joining us. Thank you all for contributing to the chat. As I said, my name is Cheryl and I'm a coordinator for the Kentucky Advising Academy, and we appreciate you for taking the time today to be with us. If you are here not only for the learning but also for ELA credit, that will be shared at the end of the webinar, and you'll get details on how to receive that at the end of our time together. So on our agenda for today, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to have a brief overview of the Kentucky Advising Academy for any new guests that we might have with us today. And then I will be passing it over to our guests for today's webinar. If you have a question at any point, please just drop it in the chat. We will share those questions either before the end of the day during our Q&A portion or offline after today's webinar. We're then going to wrap up by going over some ways to stay connected with the Kentucky Advising Academy, as well as share our survey so we can continue to evaluate our work and know how to send you that ELO or Frisky credit. For anyone that is joining our webinar for the first time, the Kentucky Advising Academy exists to support Kentucky educators in providing students equitable access to post-secondary advising for successful transitions from secondary education to their desired careers. The KAA does this by providing comprehensive professional learning sessions, online resources, networking opportunities, all centered around post-secondary advising. And we have multiple ways that practitioners can choose to engage and be involved with the KAA. Monthly, we offer our Well Advised podcast. This is a brief podcast covering timely post-secondary advising topics, as well as our monthly webinar, which you're joining us for today. The podcast and webinar often share a similar topic or theme for the month, but it's two different forms, so you can take it however it's most digestible for you. We also have our professional learning events, online emails if you are on our newsletter listserv, as well as an online toolkit that houses a ton of resources for practitioners all across the state. So if you've joined our webinar before or taken advantage of all that we offer, we thank you. If you're here for the first time, we will be sharing all of these resources at the end of our time today, as well as how to access them. So you will be able to implement these resources into your current post-secondary advising work. And with that, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest for today. Joining us is Dr. Michelle Sircy, Program Coordinator for Comprehensive School Counseling with the Kentucky Department of Education out of the Office of Teaching and Learning, as well as Dr. Jessika Benson, a secondary school counselor at Dew Point Manual High School. I just want to say thank you both so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Michelle and Jessika can take it over.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Cheryl. We are extremely excited to be here today. I want to thank the Council for Post-Secondary Education and KAA for inviting us to talk about something that Dr. Benson and I are very passionate about. Before we get started, if you feel comfortable, we would love to see your all's faces. It helps us to gauge the excitement in the room and if the information that we're giving you is meeting where you need us to go. And then also, we are going to be doing quite a bit of activities in the chat. Don't worry, you don't have to unmute your microphone, but we would love for you to stay engaged in the chat as we kind of dive into how do we help students go from striving to thriving in their success after high school. Before we do that, I'm going to give Jessika a little moment to tell about herself and her educational journey, and then I'll do the same, and we'll hop right into our content. So, Dr. Benson?
Hi, I am Dr. Jessika Benson, and I currently am a counselor at DuPont Manual High School in Louisville. The topic for today is very near and dear to my heart because I did do research on social and emotional learning for students as part of my doctoral program. I also am a adjunct instructor at Spalding University, so I also teach pre-service counselors. I've been a college coach in the chat. I saw many of you all were with Gear Up. I worked with Upward Bound. So I've worked both in the college prep type area of education, and then also secondary, and then even being an instructor in college. So I'm very excited to work with you all and to give you all some very much needed information about how we can prep our students for going into college, and more so on the social and emotional side, because that is definitely an area where kids are sometimes neglected as far as the formal education we give them in school. So I'm super excited to engage with you all today.
Thank you, Dr. Benson. And my name is Dr. Michelle Sircy, and I'm currently the Program Coordinator of Comprehensive School Counseling at the Kentucky Department of Education. I have 22 years of experience in public education. I started off in Bullitt County as a special ed teacher, then transferred to Jefferson County Public Schools, where I served as a high school counselor. And then for the last decade, I served as the school counseling director for Jefferson County Public Schools, which they call a specialist, but serves that same purpose. And this is my first year at KDE. So I am really excited to get to partner with my longtime friend and colleague, Dr. Jessika Benson. She has such a wealth of knowledge and passion in this area. I'm super excited to have this opportunity to share this experience with her and with all of you. So before we get started, we're going to kind of do a welcome and inclusion activity. And this is one of those opportunities for you all to really get engaged in the chat. So in the chat, can you drop and tell us, what do you currently see as the biggest barrier of post-secondary success for the students you serve? Whether you're at the high school level, at the collegial level, or the college prep level, what are your current barriers that you see for success in post-secondary? Okay, we have parent engagement. Echoing that, support from home, being unprepared for post-secondary learning, financial support. Yes, all of those are great. Let's get a few more. Students not wanting to engage. They lack having a mentor. Not aware of resources, options, and they're scared. I love that. We know that our post-secondary partners have a wealth of resources, but sometimes students don't know how to access those, or they're not even aware that they're there. Students not going from where they got accepted to college, but then actually going come August. So they get accepted, but then them actually showing up for school, having the confidence to succeed. Yes, all of those things. Okay, so we are going to touch on quite a bit of this today, but with the purview that we have 50 minutes. So if this is something that you are passionate about and you would like additional information, additional workshops, please put that down on your evaluation at the end of today. And I'm sure that's something that we can partner with CPE and KAA on in the future. So we are going to set a landscape, review a report card, if you will, of how high school students currently feel. Do they feel ready for life after high school? And so this is coming straight from that student lens, and we're pulling this information from Youth Truth, and it is from 2016, so it's a little bit older, but still relevant. So when Youth Truth sent out this survey, they surveyed over 50,000 students. And here is one thought from a student. They said that they feel like once they get to college, they're not going to be as prepared as they want to be. And I don't feel prepared for the transition I will have to make for college. And we saw you all echo that in the chat just a moment ago. Another student said the things we learn help us pass tests so we can get a good grade, but we don't learn basic skills for studying that will help us survive in college. So they may know how to pass a test, but when it comes to actually being on their own, they don't feel as prepared. So in our high school settings, they have quite a bit of support. Have you ever chased a kid down to try to get them to fill out a scholarship application? I bet you have. Or to get them to even apply for college, to help them write their essay. Like, we are constantly chasing kids and giving them that very one-on-one personalized support. So when they transition to the college level, they don't always know how to do those things on their own. And so then we're going to finish it off with what Youth Truth found. And so they asked the students, have you participated in any of the following services at their school? So as you can see, students are aware that these services exist. They think that they're helpful, but they haven't even actually used the services. So some of the support platforms that we have in our high school settings, students know they are there, but they've never accessed that. And I'm sure this is something that you have experienced in the high school that you serve at, or in other services that you've provided for getting students ready for post-secondary success. So then we're going to come around and we're going to look, okay, so we have students that they need these services. They want the services, but they're not actually taking advantage of them. And then we also have the part where students are saying, I'm just not as prepared as I should be, and I don't know what to do about that. And one of the things that I want to point out to you, if you are serving in that high school space, or you're working with students trying to get them post-secondary prepared, one of the things that we can do to find out why, like that survey has great information, right? But we would want to follow up with them in something that we call empathy interviews. And empathy interviews are sitting down and simply talking to students and asking them why. As educators and professionals, sometimes we can assume that we know why students aren't doing things. But until we take the time to sit with them and actually listen to their story and experiences, it's hard for us to make a plan on how to move forward to support them. So you can find a great deal of information about empathy interviews online. Literally all you have to do is Google empathy interviews and those will pop up for you. But it's a great strategy when we're trying to figure out what we need to shift and adjust in getting students post-secondary ready. Okay, so we've talked about the academic component of it. Now let's look at the mental health part of it. So this is from an organization that focuses on anxiety and depression in America. And so we look at the mental health of college-age students. Our students are saying that they are very anxious. They don't know how to balance work, friends, and family. For most of our kids, this is the first time they've been away from home, where they have their own responsibilities. They're focusing on their own time management, how to juggle all of these really complex and heavy time demand issues as well as looking at the financial component and how to just take care of their basic needs. So anxiety disorders are one of the most common mental health problems that we will see on college campuses. And so there in the middle in the orange, you can see that 30% of our college students reported that they're stressed, and that had a negative effect on their academic performance. 41% stated that anxiety is the top concern among college students. 85% of college students reported that they had left college overwhelmed by everything they had to do at some point in the past year. So when you look at those retention rates and how many students are being retained and completers in the college application process, we see that this particular study said that 85% of them left. Of the ones that did leave and did not complete, 85% of those left because they were just too overwhelmed and they didn't know how to navigate the college process and the college scene. So now when we look at data specific to the US, among students 15 to 24 years old, the top cause of death is unintentional injury. So when you dig into that a little deeper, you can see a lot of risky behavior that has led to those unintentional injury. Again, that goes back to them not being home and having that supervision that they're used to and being able to make good decisions for their life and for their future. Followed by that unintentional injury with that risky behavior, you see that suicide rates is the second leading cause of death for our college-age students, followed by homicide. So being able to proactively take care of their mental health, but then also knowing how to engage with others in an appropriate way and make good decisions. And then lastly, when we're setting up the table or the report card for Kentucky students, student belonging and connectedness to mental health. The mental health crisis on college campuses is at an all-time high, and this comes from the NEA. So I just put in here some of the key takeaways from this article because we don't have time to really dive into it. But the major takeaways for this particular article are talking about the majority of college students today, they don't meet the criteria for at least one mental health problem. Oh, they do meet, I'm sorry. And then the rates of mental health problems are the same among students of all races, but students of color are less likely to get treatment. And then lastly, making matters worse, counseling centers are overwhelmed. And you guys see this everywhere. If you've tried to get counseling services for yourself, a child, a spouse, a parent, a colleague, sometimes you can be on waiting lists for 6 to 9 months because there is just not capacity in the mental health field to meet the level of need that people in our society are currently having. So let's chat a little bit. So we're going to use the chat feature again and get you pulled back in and engaged with the conversation. When you talk to alumni from your school that are struggling in the post-secondary setting, what do they say they struggle with the most? Like, what is the one thing that students are coming back and saying they struggle with the most? If you're in the post-secondary institution, you can also flip that and you can tell us, now that you have these students, what do they say they're struggling with the most? And we are going to take a look at our chat box to see what you guys say. And you guys really are the experts in this. You're seeing students every day. You're the ones that are engaging with them, helping them, supporting them through this process. How to pay for college. Yes. Those financial burdens are huge, especially if kids aren't able to get scholarships or grants. Time management. They have all of these things that they have to get done, and they don't know how to use their calendar appropriately and manage their time to meet all the demands that they have. Part of that time management, Renardo, I feel like is being able to juggle what they want to do, the fun stuff, with what they have to do. Managing life, again, that same thing. Trouble with the FAFSA, parents won't cooperate. Time management and funding, time management, knowing how to study. FAFSA issues this year have been unbelievable. And if you are working with students and families, my hat is off to you for all the work that you have been doing and as you continue to do, helping students through this new process. There's so many scholarships for first year, but not many following year. Yes, Shelley, so we can get them there into college with these first year scholarships, but if they're not ongoing, if they don't renew, then sometimes our students are unable to pay for year 2 and beyond. financial literacy, what to do with student loans, and balancing social life. Thank you guys so much. And then a follow-up to that is, what soft skills are your students missing? So this can be what you're hearing from potential employers, that your students are missing these soft skills, what you see in your work, whether that be at the high school level or the post-secondary level or the advising level. When you look at students, what are the soft skills that they are currently missing in this generation? You've already named some of them. Communication, that one popped up real fast for a whole bunch of people. Communication, work ethic, the ability to communicate how they're feeling, how to engage and advocate for themselves. Yes, that's the first time we've seen that advocating piece, but we know that that is something that students can really struggle with. Being able to talk to people. We are in the age where everything is done through text, instant message, Snapchat, so they don't know how to actually verbally communicate with others. Self-advocacy. I like that. So or I don't know if it's a Sarah, a Star, she has started to give all of students undated planners, and it's a good way to teach them how to use a planner without feeling defeated when they mess up. I love that. So you guys are right on target, and this builds right into where we are going to go with the rest of our conversation today. Let me try to switch here. So when we are exploring how social and emotional competencies influence college and career readiness, you guys mentioned most of these things in the chat that you're seeing from students. So students are struggling with self-regulation, how to set goals, how to persist, those study skills, and having self-control with time management, the mindset, the sense that they belong in the space that they are, believing in the value of the work, having the self-confidence and motivation. And then the social skills, just being able to work with other people, having perspectives and appreciation of diversity and empathy. You know, when you look at the Gallup poll, they surveyed over 900,000 students, and they wanted to measure the level of engagement that students had throughout their K-12 experience. In an elementary school, you see students have a high sense of engagement, a high sense of belonging. But as they go through middle school and high school, it drops down. By the time they get into high school, only 32% of our students feel engaged and feel like they belong in that setting. Why do you guys think that is? Like, why do we have such high levels of engagement in elementary school, but as students progress, they have little, almost none engagement in that high school space? And you can unmute. We are a small group. You can unmute if you want to, or you can drop it in there. Peer influence, absolutely. That's quite possibly the issue. More parent involvement is had at the elementary and high school level. Yep. Wanda says not sure of their identity. What's something that we provide to elementary school students that we don't provide to high school? Jessica, I like that. School focuses on engaging top performers or troubled teens. Mackenzie says recess. Yes, we do provide students recess at the elementary level, and they do not get that at the high school level. But something else that we provide at the elementary that as you go into middle, it drops off substantially. But then when you get to high school, it's almost non-existent at all. And that's social emotional learning. And you see how these three especially relate to success in post-secondary. So when we look at it, college and career readiness, one aspect of college and career readiness that can easily be overlooked is the development of soft skills. And we hear this from our employers all the time. And you guys nailed these: working with others, having time management. And this is regardless of what profession or job they go into, whether they go to college or they go right into a career track. This is what we're hearing from people that receive our students. They don't have the ability to communicate. They don't have the ability to problem solve. They're not adaptable. They lack self-motivation and conflict resolution. You guys hit on almost all of these. So now I am going to pass this off to Jessika, Dr. Benson, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about what SEL is and what that can look like in the high school setting. Dr. Benson, the floor is yours.
Okay, I am so excited. I'm reading the chat and I'm listening to Dr. Sircy, and what I realize is I'm with my people, because as you all were putting your things in the chat, I was like, yes, 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 that is something that I see all the time. I've been a counselor in schools for 18 years, and when I had my kids come back to me, the first thing they would say is, you kind of babied me, and I don't know how to navigate around the college campus, and I don't know how to study. How do I do my financial aid? And I've got this boyfriend. How do I handle my relationship and then still, engage in college? So once I saw all of your answers in the chat, I was so excited to be able to talk to you guys about this topic today. Social and emotional learning is dear to my heart. I studied it for my dissertation because what I noticed as an educator is that we have very formalized type of knowledge base that we provide students in the area of academics. But what I saw consistently as a counselor was that kids needed some supports in other areas, and particularly their emotional development. So I began to study social and emotional learning, which really is just the key term for a process in which both young people that are emerging into adulthood and adults just acquire essential skills in order to develop their own identity. I saw people talking about that in the chat. It also is the process by which we learn how to both recognize and identify our emotions, manage those, and set goals based on who we are and what we want to do with our life. It also allows us to understand and show empathy for others and understand why that's important in order to have, in order to establish and both maintain supportive relationships throughout our life. And for college students, this is super important because you're going to be having relationships not just with people in which you choose to, but also your staff that you're going to be working with. You no longer have that parent that is the middleman who's going to be able to speak for you and advocate for you. So students are having to garner relationships with professors and staff on campus and friends so that they are able to be fully supported as they're transitioning into a new setting. And also, one of the most important things that social emotional learning focuses on is being able to make decisions, good decisions that not only focus on one particular aspect of your life, but these kids are making decisions that are going to impact their financial stability over time, their personal relationships, and their career development. So social emotional learning really encompasses all of the things that kids are having to tackle as they are making that important transition from sort of adolescence into young adulthood and then through college where they're becoming an adult. All right, so what does social emotional learning look like in schools? Now, I wanted to focus on, why it's important to integrate social emotional learning in schools. Now, right now, what you'll see around the country is that social emotional learning is something that is an option. So there are some states where they have mandated that social emotional learning be integrated in schools. There are some districts that have social emotional learning departments, but all schools do not. But it should be, because it addresses those very important things that we're all trying to tackle as educators: the achievement gap, attendance issues, issues with violence, and of course, mental health can all be addressed by integrating social and emotional learning strategies into our schools. All right, so how specifically does social emotional learning help students? Well, first let's talk about the different competencies. There's self-awareness. Again, that's just where students are able to recognize their own emotions and their own strengths. Self-management is just where they are not only able to recognize those emotions, but they're able to manage those. That goes into students' behaviors, and that pro-social behaviors and even behaviors that can be problematic at schools, in schools. So if students can build competencies in that area, then it helps them to focus on those pro-social behaviors that will get them into college and help them as they go throughout their educational journey. Social awareness is where they can show empathy for others. Now, Dr. Sircy touched a little bit on social media and kids using technology a lot in order to communicate. Sometimes those things can impede students' social awareness. When you have a device that you are utilizing in order to communicate, sometimes kids don't understand social cues. Sometimes they are missing that one-on-one behavioral interaction with other students and even staff members at school. So it impedes their ability to be able to be aware and have empathy for others. So it's very important that kids are learning about social awareness through social emotional learning. We kind of talked about the importance of relationship skills. Also, as far as being effective with resolving conflicts. So a few people earlier mentioned students having issues with communication skills. And that is a foundation for having better relationships and being able to deal with conflict. So when you're integrating SEL into schools, one of the things that we would focus on definitely is building communication skills for the purpose of having good relationships. And last, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but responsible decision-making helps kids as far as making ethical and constructive choices about personal and their social behavior. Again, throughout high school and in college, to me, that is the whole reason why I wanted to become a counselor in schools, because I felt like for myself, the decisions that I made in high school, especially as I was 16, 17 years old, really even affect me to this day. So I think it's very important for kids to learn the importance of being thoughtful about the decisions they're making, also being considerate of others, and just understanding how their decision making also affects their community. So social emotional learning helps them to understand those aspects that go along with decision making so they make better choices. Oops. Oh, okay. All right, the collaborative nature of SEL work. Now, this chart is something that was that I gathered from the collaborative on social emotional learning. They kind of are the research base for social emotional learning in general. And the chart on the right just gives you a visual for how social emotional learning could/should be implemented in a school. First of all, I do want to say that counselors, Friskies, everyone on this call are the ideal professionals to work and implement social emotional learning in schools, because it is a very, very, very collaborative type of effort. You have to work with teachers to embed it into classroom instruction and instruction that kids will just receive throughout your school. You're going to be working with community members, parents, your administrators. What does that sound like? That sounds like your Friskies and your counselors. All of those people are going to have to work together logistically to embed social emotional learning into your school, and they're going to have to be the ones who are going to provide a knowledge base to the others that are going to be helping to instruct our students. Counselors and Friskies have the training and the skill set to understand SEL work. Just like I said earlier, when you guys put that information in the chat, you already knew the importance of SEL and these soft skills. So we need people like you to help train the students and train sort of teachers and other staff who are going to be helping you. And especially shout out to my Friskies having connections to the community. We are the ones who are the holders of all resources. So when you're doing SEL work, you most definitely may have to work with a therapist from in your community, different organizations and agencies that help with college prep. You're going to have to build sort of a team around helping students to gain competencies associated with SEL. Okay, here are some specific strategies for high schools. And when I put this slide together, what I want you all to know is these are things that I actually have done. I've worked in high schools for the majority of my career. Dr. Sircy and I actually worked at a high school together many moons ago. But when I tell you strategies, it's because these are things I've actually used, and I know that's important for us as practitioners. We don't want to just hear about, research and things that people do sort of in a controlled setting. These are things that's actually used in schools. So first of all, you have to educate your stakeholders, okay? You can't just say we're going to, implement these lessons or have a particular program without explaining to people the why. So that's why earlier in the presentation, I talked about the connection between SEL and addressing some of the major issues we have in schools. That's how you get people engaged. Now, I don't think that it should be necessary to have buy-in from people when we're helping kids, but that's the reality of our job in some cases. So you have to educate and make that connection between kids learning SEL skills and then them being better prepared for college, maybe them making better behavioral decisions, making better choices academically. You will have to be the connector to create that synergy between what we want for the kids and actually being able to implement these strategies successfully. You have to be able to make connections between student experiences in SEL, and we're going to talk about this a little later in the presentation. But if you're constantly having kids come to your office and they are talking about being stressed, having anxiety, maybe they're talking about how they don't know how to communicate with teachers, or they're having trouble with their parents and their parents not understanding the importance of mental health. You are going to have to take that information that you have and make the connection between what the student is experiencing and how your social emotional learning strategies will then help that student and help other stakeholders who are involved. Normalizing learning beyond the cognitive realm. Again, like what I did personally was start to survey kids about what did they need from us in our school. And I will tell you overwhelmingly, they talked about, yes, academics, but it was more so being stressed out about academics, or like I said earlier, not really understanding how to communicate with adults. Other students talked about study skills, talked about having struggles with relationships. All of those things really encompass what they would learn through social emotional learning. So once we were able to learn about what the kids needed, we're then able to put out information and constantly to help normalize the fact that everyone was struggling with similar problems and that was a need for kids to then learn beyond the cognitive realm. They didn't just need to focus on their classes, they needed to focus on overall better mental health and life preparation. You need to provide all stakeholders with resources and community support to help build SEL. So you could do that any way in which you would want to choose. You could build, a website. You could have a space in your office or in a common area in the school just to make sure that people could access social emotional learning resources in a way in which was comfortable for them. And also, as much as you can, talk about social emotional learning and how it would be something that you're going to focus on in your school so that people will utilize you as a resource as well. So you want to be well equipped and have your own resources also. So when people come and speak to you, you'll have information to share. One big one for me at my school is create an SEL plan. So what I would suggest is look at the student as an individual. You're going to look at classrooms, and you're going to look at large school type of interventions that you can provide. And all of those together will create the larger plan that you would have for your school. So you'll have multiple means and methods planned for you to be able to engage with your students and staff regarding social emotional learning. Now, I do this each and every year, and I have a team of stakeholders that I work with to get feedback on what we need and how we logistically can implement the social emotional learning strategies. And that team could include anyone in which you think would be integral to that conversation in your school. And last would be to include social emotional learning in your multi-tiered systems of support. So when we talk about multi-tiered systems of supports, or MTSS, we're usually talking about academic, behavioral, and mental health. We also could include college and career, but you just want to include social emotional learning strategies within that overall plan of support. So when students do indicate that they need growth and development in that area, which we have demonstrated that they do, you will have interventions ready in order to support your students and staff.
So Dr. Benson talked a little bit about MTSS, but I want to introduce a different type of system. It's multi-tiered, multi-domain systems of support, also referred to as MTMDSS. And typically when you look at MTSS model, you have an academic component and you have a behavior component. But what is missing is this middle piece here, called the college and career ready. And Dr. Benson just talked about that. So she talked about when you develop your plan, you need to have your tier 1. What type of college and career preparation and exploration are they going to get at the school level? Every student, no matter who you are, what grade level you are, that's what they're going to get on a tier 1. That means all students get it. Tier 2 is that you may have a smaller group of students that need more support. So let's think about this, about some of our communities that we serve that may need more support. So I immediately go to our multilingual learners, students that are new to the United States. You may need to do a group for students that don't have family support, or you could do a small group for first generation students. Like there's so many different things we can do at the individual in tier 2 level. And then that tier 3 is really intensive interventions. So an example of that would be for the college and career. Let's say you have an undocumented student at your school and they're not able to apply for the FAFSA. They don't have financial accessibility like some of our other students have. So that would be reaching out to the post-secondary institutions and trying to develop an intensive plan to support that student in their dreams in our schools. This is another way to look at it. So these are just some samples of practices across those domains. So I'm going to switch over here, since we are talking about the social emotional component of our students being ready and being able to thrive in those post-secondary settings. And again, you have the thinking skills, you have the learning techniques, which does include the time management, test taking skills, note taking strategies. And then I love this one on ownership of learning. So how do we help our students set goals, realistic goals? And not only setting the goals, but then developing plans for how to reach those goals once they do set them. Persistence, help seeking, motivation, self-efficacy. We're talking a lot about the benefits of social emotional learning for students, especially for post-secondary success, but also think about your teachers. SEL isn't just something that we teach children. It's not something that is just beneficial for students. It is equally as beneficial for teachers and adults, but that's not something that we often think about. So what we see, what research has shown us, is that when students are engaged in social emotional learning, the teachers have an equal benefit from that service. So they are also learning self-soothing strategies. They are also learning how to communicate with others, how to resolve conflict. They are also learning how to set realistic expectations for themselves in time management. So when you think about this, it's not just something that students will benefit from, but it'll benefit the whole school. We see a historic high of teacher and educator burnout. And if there's anything we can do to support that, we most certainly need to do that as leaders within the educational realm. Okay, I'm going to bounce this back to Dr. Benson to talk about some specific things that she has done at these different tiers for post-secondary readiness and SEL.
All right, thank you. I do want to answer someone in the chat. They asked about a needs assessment. What I will tell you about needs assessment is this. In order for you to get the best information, what I do is I might look online for an example of a needs assessment, but ultimately I will take bits and pieces from different ones based on what the needs are at my school. That is going to make sure that the information that you get is useful for you and is going to be most beneficial for your students and staff and for the goals of your school. So that's what I would suggest. That's what I've done in the past is create my own needs assessment based on my knowledge base and from teachers and other staff, like what they're seeing with students. So that's definitely what I would suggest. Now, when it comes to multi-tiered systems of support, what I will tell you all is I've been counseling for long enough to know that when I come to a new school, what I typically do is I take some time to observe and understand the student population that I have. And then I go in and start to take account for what interventions and resources are already in place, and then create a school-specific multi-tiered systems of support. And this one in specific is just school counseling because that's my role. And what Dr. Sircy was talking about was, how we have different supports and interventions that we use based on college and career and social emotional needs. So you'll see an example of one that I created currently from my current role at DuPont Manual. And I will tell you all what we have at our school. Our profile of student is very high achieving. We're a criterion-based magnet school. So the students do have to apply here based on their specific area of interest. So most of the time we do have very high achieving students. And what I have learned about high achieving students is they also are the most needy when it comes to social and emotional supports, because they're very much typically stressed about their academics and maintaining their their grades and things. And sometimes students who are very high achievers in one area might need more supports in the other. So you'll see here that we have a full list of interventions for social and emotional. You'll see at tier 1, we do have core counseling instruction. That means that's counseling instruction that's all students receive on a large scale. That means every student in the school. We have, I want to say 3 or 4 times a year, we do school-wide social emotional intervention. We also have what's called Crimson Hour. That's once every 6 weeks where the students have choice in what they do for an hour, and it's mandated by our principal that we do have several social and emotional learning opportunities during that Crimson Hour. We're going to talk a little bit later about a stress less week that I do for students that's associated with testing time and AP tests and things like that. We have choice boards. And then at tier 2, you see we do have mentoring. I heard someone earlier talk about the need for mentoring. So we have specifically made it a point to offer mentoring at our school. And then you'll see at tier 3, we do also refer to outside therapy. So we have a few different therapeutic partners that we utilize that come both in the school, they have groups, and then we also refer out if a student or parent wants supports outside of school. And you'll see, I will tell you all this, for college and career, we do merge social emotional learning with college and career. So let's say we have small groups that are focused on helping kids to be ready for post-secondary education. 2 or so of our lessons are social and emotional and or soft skill focus. So we'll do self-advocacy or getting students ready to make important decisions. So you'll see, you can look here at this chart and read over everything, but that is just how we approach all 3 tiers for college, career, academic, and social emotional learning. I'm happy to answer questions about how I have things organized here and just how we integrate all 3 areas of development with our students. But I do make it a point with each and every lesson that we have, as far as counselors go and things that we offer for Crimson Hours and things we do specific for college and career, we embed social emotional learning into everything that we do because it's such a high need at our school. So it's not always necessary for you to have just I'm having a social emotional learning lesson. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a study skills lesson where you then also talk about stress management. It can be where you're doing credit recovery, but you're explaining to students how social emotional learning and or time management and making better decisions can help them not get to a place where they have to do credit recovery. So don't feel like that your plan has to necessarily be something that is social emotional learning. You can embed and integrate it into other interventions that you're doing for the other domains. Okay, this is the tiered support specifically for social emotional learning. So this shows you all just a larger view of what we do here at my school. Again, you can see there at the bottom. I will say one thing that is super helpful that we have is on our website. We do have both a like a mental health practitioner page, and then we have a virtual calming room. That is where students have access to things that we have sort of vetted and sorted through as far as resources that they can utilize on their own. I will tell you guys that I also am a sponsor for a psychology and mental wellness group at our school, and it was those students that helped us curate what's in our virtual calming room. And again, we have therapy groups, mentoring. We do screenings for students twice a year to sort of understand who's at risk or maybe struggling with their social emotional needs so that we can place them appropriately as far as within if they need tier 2 or tier 3 intervention so that we know which type of supports to provide. You'll see at the top, we have a student support team that basically is just the counselors and the friskies and a mental health practitioner. We get together. It's like a name and claim list where we look at the kids who we know might need additional social emotional supports, and we ensure that they're getting those interventions.
And you guys, I know we are down to 4 minutes. So I also want to just kind of shed some light. Dr. Benson, she said that she's currently at DuPont Manual and she works with high achieving schools, but know that she and I both have worked at a variety of schools. And this isn't just something that you could do in a high performing setting. This is something we can do to prepare our skills to thrive in post-secondary world, no matter what type of school that you teach in or that you work in. So I just wanted to plug that real quick. It's going to look different, but it can definitely still be done. So we're not going to have time for this chat, but you can think about it on your own. How does your school or district focus on tiered supports for post-secondary success for students? And to follow that question up, do you feel that it is appropriate or is it enough for your students? And if not, what would you add if barriers were not an issue? So I think that's something that you can take back and discuss with your team to kind of figure out, okay, if there's one thing I could add next year, one thing to better support, what would that be? And I said one thing because I'm going to skip over here to systemic change. Oftentimes when we hear presentations like this, we can get into the mindset of, that sounds great, but it wouldn't work here, or we want to implement it and have it at the level that Dr. Benson has it as right away. And I wish things could go in that straight way. I wish that's how we could implement things that kids need. But unfortunately, what it really looks like is a big jumbled mess. You may try something and have to step back and punt because it didn't work well. You may implement something and then find out from students that that's not what they needed. And so getting student voice at the beginning is crucial in meeting their needs at the end. And then also being able to educate others on what this is, what social emotional learning is for post-secondary success, and what it is not. There's a lot of misinformation about what SEL is and what it is not. And so this gives you an opportunity to educate others and advocate for our role in helping our students succeed in life. So that is all we're going to be able to cover today. We did have to skip through some slides, so we want to make sure that, well, let me click back to this. I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. Love it. I think there's a lot of great leader lessons from Ted Lasso. And I just want to point out a couple, and that's be a goldfish. If you need to have a 10-second memory when it comes to mistakes. Oftentimes we can circle and ponder and get caught in this loop of just focusing on our mistakes and not looking at our wins. Your mistakes are okay. You're not perfect. You're not meant to be perfect, and that's okay. And then learn ideas from everywhere. We've thrown a lot of things at you in this short hour, but there's all kinds of resources on the internet that you can grab and plug into. Definitely want to steer you towards Castle, who is the leader in social emotional learning. And then lastly, believe in yourself. Like whatever it is you want to do, believe that you can do it. Set a goal, make sure it's achievable and attainable and not out of your realm of reach, and then just go for it. If you need more information or you would like to pick our brains a little more, here is our contact information. So you have our email addresses, and then you also have our Twitter handles. We would love for you to follow us. We'll follow you back and would like to see what it is that you're doing with your students that we can highlight throughout the state. So thank you all for joining in today. We have appreciated our time with you. And Cheryl, we are in that 5-minute mark that you needed, so we are going to bounce it back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen to wrap us up here. All right. Thank you again to Dr. Sircy and Dr. Benson for that super informational and a conversation that we could probably have for hours if we had the time. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free, as we said at the beginning of the webinar, to send those directly to Dr. Benson or Dr. Sircy from where they shared their emails, or there is a spot on our evaluation for any follow-up questions. And as always, you can reach out to any of the KAA team members, and we will help guide that question back to our guest presenters today if needed. So just to wrap us up in our final few minutes here, I want to take some time to share some resources that the Kentucky Advising Academy has for you sorry, I'm clicking around here. Some are new and some you might be familiar with. So the first, I want to share the Kentucky Advising Academy College and Career Advising Toolkit. So some of that information on SEL and ILP things that have been shared today are also on that toolkit for you to access. We recently updated the layout, so it should be much easier to navigate. And this online resource is designed to support all post-secondary advising systems and offers a comprehensive collection of tools and information and resources for advisors to use. On the toolkit, you'll find things like quick guide documents that are downloadable PDFs for you to share, start here guide documents that are great conversation starters on some of the most important post-secondary topics, all of which are curated and designed to give you very clear starting points when navigating various post-secondary quandaries and topics with your students. So we encourage you to take a look at this toolkit if you haven't accessed it yet. Feel free to bookmark it. The URL is on the screen, as well as a QR code if you need to access it and save it now. Next, I also want to share something that is coming very soon and we are very excited about. We have the KAA. You might have seen the Well Advised podcast, but we are soon launching the Well Advised on-demand learning series. So this will be a series of modules that are all centered around those post-secondary advising topics. And our first module topic is partnership, and it will be available in just a few days on the KAA Toolkit site alongside all of our other resources that I've already mentioned today to share with all of your post-secondary advisors and for those here in their webinar today. Another initiative we have right now is trying to highlight post-secondary bright spots all across the Commonwealth. So we are compiling the best post-secondary advising practices and success stories, much like you've seen today shared by Dr. Benson, to share statewide. And we'd love to know what is working for you and for your students. So if you have an experience or an event or something you'd like to brag on your program or even a colleague within the realm of post-secondary advising, we would like to receive a 2 to 3 paragraph description of your event, kind of the what, when, where, and how it took place, and a picture or video highlighting what occurred. If you have one of these experiences, please share it with our director, Mitzi Holland, by May 30th. And her email is down there right at the bottom, mitzi.holland@ky.gov with the subject bright spots. Last but not least, I encourage you to stay connected with KAA as we end our time here together. Of course, as shared earlier, there is the toolkit link, and a lot of these links are being shared in the chat as well. You can find us on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter, as well as YouTube at Advising KY or by searching the Kentucky Advising Academy. This is where you'll find all of our up-to-date information, posts about our upcoming events, and anything we have that is available to you as a resource will be shared on these outlets, as well as Facebook. Facebook is at Advising KY as well. Last but not least, I want to encourage you to please complete this survey. This is our own evaluation as well as how you will receive your ELA and Frisky credit if it is needed. This is how we continue to improve the Kentucky Advising Academy and all of our offerings. And so even if you don't need the ELA credit, we do ask that everyone participating today to please fill it out. Let us know if there's any questions or any more information you would like from the guest presenters or the webinar that was hosted today. This is also where you'll have the opportunity kind of down at the end of that Google form to ask any questions or give any notes, things that you might like to share. This link has also been added to the chat. And we'll use this form to email you your ELA certificate, so make sure you enter in that email address correctly. We thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you at any future events. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to Dr. Sircy and Dr. Benson. That was an amazing and so informational time today. I wish we had longer, but I'm gonna leave this here on the screen for anybody to fill out that evaluation that might need to. And again, thank you all for being here today.